This morning, we're here on, unfortunately, what is a typical topic, and a topic that myself and Representative Candelara and both of our caucuses have discussed time and time again, and it's a topic that we wish we didn't have to discuss it time and time again. And when you see it time and time again, it becomes inherent. It becomes systematic, and unfortunately, we've seen a system in place from report after report after report that has indicated the fact that we have a candy store in the state of Connecticut, like I've said before, and it's open and it's being used. And it's become systemic within our system. It's not only what you saw with Mr. Diamandis being convicted on corruption charges. It's not only from misuse of taxpayer funds on purchase cards that the governor has called small ball in the past. It's not only systems in which we see legislators that are well connected to nonprofit organizations receiving, in some cases, millions and millions of dollars and getting investigated by federal grand juries. There is a systemic problem with corruption in the state of Connecticut, and something finally has to be done about it. And this is what you get when you get one-party rule. When you have one-party rule that controls every single lever of state government, you get a level of arrogance in which we've seen right here in Connecticut, where legislators, where government officials can think they can use a taxpayer dime as if it were their own personal money. And it has to stop. And we just had a press conference last week about affordability here in the state of Connecticut. We have an affordability crisis. We're the third most unaffordable state in the country when you look at most metrics. And what contributes to that is millions and tens of millions, if not more, in taxpayer hard-earned money going into the pockets of government officials and then being handed out to people that are well connected to those officials, time and time and time again. That's money that could be invested in areas that actually could help people. That's money that could be relieved from the taxpayer, and that's what it should be done. So we're here today to close this candy store, to end the systemic corruption that we've seen here in Connecticut, and to implement measures that would bring transparency to the appropriation process so the hard-earned taxpayer money that is being sent to Hartford is being used wisely. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Candelara.
Thank you, Senator Harding. We're not short of bills in this short session. We're hearing proposals coming out trying to regulate homeschool, dealing with vaccines, taking away religious freedom, putting impositions on local zoning and housing. The one thing that has been silently not talked about is the systemic corruption that we're seeing coming out of the state of Connecticut. And we need to make it a priority. Not just for the residents of Connecticut, but also for the integrity of this building. I had the pleasure of coming into office when Governor Rell was serving, and she took over at a tough time in the state of Connecticut, and we saw the Citizens Election Program be put in place. She also did something in that she removed the earmark process. And she said, enough is enough. We are not going to create this OPM list of projects for people to get. And we turned things into competitive grants where there was transparency, there was applications. And Governor Malloy carried on that tradition. What's changed now is the influx of money that we've seen from the good fiscal policies that were supported by Republicans in 2017 that was supposed to be money that was generated to pay down debt and go back to the taxpayers. Instead, sadly, we have seen Democrats eating at the trough, taking this money, not just for programs that we may not support, but actually for personal gain of friends and families. It needs to stop. And so we are here today to say that we are not going away. Our proposals are not going to go away. We are going to propose them again and again and again until we at least hear from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle and this governor that they are going to get serious about the fraud, corruption, and abuse in the state of Connecticut. We could talk about what we've seen in the past of Terrence Chang or Costas Diamantis or the new upcoming trial that's dealing with the fraud. But I don't want to focus on the people today. We need to focus on the systems and what has actually happened. That being, we talk about our healthcare system and it's in crisis. And meanwhile, we had a commissioner that strangely put an end to a $600,000 fraud investigation that the FBI had to come in and uncover in order for criminal charges to be brought and then the state of Connecticut to do the right thing and remove those bad actors. And meanwhile, people are going without in the state of Connecticut. So we are here collectively to stand up against this corruption and again to continue to push our proposals. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Harding to discuss some of them.
So, and thank you, Vin, and all good points. You know, I also think it's important to note that we've seen this unfortunately go on across the country, and we can't be blind to the fact that without diligent reporters asking questions and following up on where some of the money went within state government, we've seen like in Minnesota, that this wouldn't have been discovered. We've already seen it right in front of our face. And then that's the ironic part about this. This doesn't have to take much digging. We've seen the corruption outright right in front of our face. We've seen unbelievably questionable things go on. We've seen the process systematically broken and it being reported upon. Unfortunately, it's not being investigated further to the point where it could fully be exposed. But we can't be lost to the fact that what is going on in Minnesota and other state governments where there's just outright fraud within taxpayer money use within government, it may not be going on here. And so questions need to be asked, but more importantly, to ensure us we could stop the bleeding, measures need to be put in place so that there's transparency surrounding at least the earmark process and others. I mean, one thing that we lost on too is you read that the housing commission or the housing commissioner transfers a building ownership for $22 million and doesn't add one unit of housing to an organization that she was connected to. I mean, how is that not followed up on? How are people not asking these questions of what went on here? $22 million in taxpayer money being used in that type of manner? I mean, I have families calling me up saying they can't afford to pay their electric bill. They can't afford groceries this month. But we have $22 million sitting around to hand off to organizations? Really? And so with that said, you know, at least transparency regarding the earmark process to stop from what happened in last year's budget when millions of dollars in the dead of night got handed out in the state budget to organizations that in some cases didn't even have existing websites or weren't even registered. To this day, both of our caucus have asked questions about organizations within last year's budget that were nonprofits that received money. Some of them created social media pages literally the day before the budget passed. Some of them weren't even registered as entities with the state of Connecticut. Some of them have no existing website, registration, address. And we're not talking about like a few $100s. We're talking about tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars in some cases. So to say, you know, to question whether or not this is systemic, as I said, it's right in front of our face, unfortunately. So what we have is a proposal that will bring transparency surrounding that earmark process. It's going to require these organizations to come before appropriations, to advise what they're going to spend the money on, to give the request of the amount of money that they're spending. They also have to disclose what legislator is promoting this organization, and also would have to disclose if that particular legislator has a relationship with that organization, whether they be connected to it, a family member, a friend may be connected to it. They need to advise that and disclose that, so there's transparency around how our taxpayer money is spent in the state budget. So we think these are logical measures to avoid the corruption, unfortunately, that we've seen, and that's one step. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Representative Candelara to discuss another.
So you've heard this proposal before, but we are still suggesting that the state of Connecticut create an Inspector General's office. We saw it created during the Police Accountability Bill, where we are now subjecting our police force, in my mind, to over-scrutiny, but to an Inspector General process that at least investigates to bring integrity to the police force, and at least let people know there's independent review if you feel things have been done wrong to you. The legislature, no question, needs that kind of oversight. We need an independent body that can investigate waste, fraud, and abuse in the state of Connecticut. You know, last year we created the Government Oversight Committee. I supported that in our rules change, thinking that that committee would kind of serve that purpose. Sadly, they have rebuffed and refused to address any of the audits that are coming out time and again from our public auditors, citing wrongdoing, misappropriation of money, and year-over-year misfeasance with taxpayer dollars goes ignored. We had asked them to open up an inspection last fall. Again, they refused to do so. So I think this system is broken. I think it's a political body, obviously, instead of being one that is trying to provide oversight to government. We think we need an independent agency. It would be nonpartisan, selected in cooperation with the governor's office and the legislature to appoint people to actually do the investigations of fraud, waste, and abuse. We don't want to wait for the FBI to come into Connecticut and do more grand jury investigations to keep this building honest. We think we need our Inspector General to do that before we end up in the newspapers with embarrassing stories and criminal court cases, one of which is going to be starting in April.